So
There we go.
do you want to introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are, what you do, and anything else you want to say about yourself, as in to introduce yourself?
Okay. So I'm Angela. I am 46. I'm from Edinburgh and I'm in recovery and I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a pain in the butt sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you live up in Edinburgh with your family? Are you still with your mum? Because I know you were staying with your mum, weren't you?
Yeah. When I moved back to Edinburgh, I was homeless. So I moved back in with my mum and my dad, but then my dad passed away. So I stayed there I lived with her for about 4 years. And then I kind of moved out. So I'm actually living with my partner now, but I actually still go and stay with my mum 2 nights a week at the moment because between me, my brother and my auntie were caring for her. So she's quite poorly at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's the matter with her?
Well, she's 77 and during COVID she had a fall and just gradually our mental health started to deteriorate and she was really in a bad way. So yeah, so we all just kind of mucked in and I'm still doing that. I mean, she's slowly getting a bit better, but yeah, she still needs kind of a lot of care.
It's really tough. It's tough, isn't it? When your parents get
Yeah.
older and you're in that position, as well
Very.
as, I think COVID hits people in such a tragic way. For some people, it was brilliant. For some people, it was awful because, like you said, it impacts on their physical health as well as their mental health.
Absolutely. Yeah. I loved it. Like I can do isolation, like no problem. So I really loved it, but it was tough, because at that time I was still staying at my mum's house and my son was there as well. And then his girlfriend moved in and it was at times it just was not like, you don't get space, it was hard to get a bit of space. And yeah, my mum like I say, she had a fall, and I think that's maybe what triggered something, and her mental health started to decline. And I think there was also stuff there around, the loss of my dad, which maybe she hadn't processed for quite a few years. And I think everything just kind of hit her at once. So it has been tough, but also quite humbling as well. Like in many ways, I feel like I'm making amends, for all the stuff the times that she's had to care for me and for my son and stuff. So that's been, quite good.
Because does your son still live with mum, or is he's still there?
He's still there. I think I need like something to prize him out of that house. But yeah, he's still there. I mean, he's doing okay.
And does he help care for your mum as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like you've got... Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say he's 27, so like I'm kind of just aware of the expectations to put on, a 27-year-old. So like he does help out, but he's trying to have his own life as well, and amongst that, and yeah.
And I think you touched on a really important point there about grief and the fact that we very rarely recognise the impact that grief has on us. And it's not just in the moment when somebody passes. It catches up or indeed creeps up on you or indeed is there all the time for people.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, that that's what I'm kind of learning as well. So I'm doing a lot of training at the moment on trauma and stuff and how like it can take years for, to start actually experiencing and processing things. And I think there's, my mum's actually been through, I don't want to talk too much about her, but like she's been through a lot in her life, and I think it can just maybe take one little thing and then all of a sudden it just goes, explodes, I suppose.
And I guess it must also be really hard for you and your brothers and sisters because it's, you're looking after your mum and it's really hard when you see them struggling. But it sounds like you've got a fairly good system in place. You mentioned that kind of rota system.
Yes.
How did that come about?
How did it come about? Well, thankfully my auntie's helping out. That's my dad's sister, you know, she's been great. So that means that the rest of the time was kind of divided between me and my brother. And my brother isn't working, well, he stopped working so that he could care for her sort of more full time, but he still needs like help. So because I'm working, you know, I'm in a fortunate position now. Before I got into my new job, I was working like 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. So that would have been pretty impossible. And then I switched jobs just before this happened, which kind of allowed me to have that bit more time. So I'm only working like 3.5 days now. So there's 2 days where I can sort of help out. And it kind of just naturally, you know, there was times when it's been really hard and like, you know, but it kind of just naturally fell into that rhythm, and it's working at the moment, I think.
It's good. It's good.
It does highlight though the impact that being a carer of whatever kind, it doesn't matter, you know, I think either being a therapist or just being a carer for a family member, the impact that that has on you as an individual and as a family, as a collective, it's quite tough at times. And not just the physical time that you have to give, but also the emotional time that you have to give as well.
Yeah. I mean, there was points where it was like when her like mental health was pretty bad, that was really tough because it just felt like there was no help. You know, there was like, she just kept getting medication after medication. And at times, like the medication made her worse, you know. Yeah. And I was like, I'm a bit of a rescuer, in case you didn't know that.
Really?
You know, so like I was like kind of like trying to get her off to see therapists and like doing mindfulness and all that. And then she was just like, she was like, I don't want to do it. Like, kind of leave me alone. And I just had to learn to accept that there's only so much I can do, and I have to just be okay with, you know, with what is really, and stop trying to fix the problem. Just do the best I can and have that bit of a boundary with it. But I feel like, you know, I've got that awareness because of my recovery journey and like really working on myself. And maybe my other family members don't have that as much. And it's not about like criticizing them or anything. It's just that, you know, so I think because there was quite a bit of codependence in my family, or still is. And if you're not aware of that, it can be really hard. You know, it can be, yeah. And I do worry about, you know, the rest of my family and stuff. But one thing I've also learned is that it's quite healthy to, when your family are poorly, to kind of want to like be that sort of community and that support. Like, it's not always a negative thing, as long as you've got the boundaries, I think.
Well, I think in the olden days, when I was younger, that was a long time ago, that's what families did though, didn't they? Exactly. They were closer together. They lived closer to each other. And you had the hierarchy of the family, which was tended to be dad or mum of that. And they both had their different roles. But then if there was a problem, everybody got together and everybody resolved it. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that go, oh, at the time, they're busybodies, they're interfering, etc., etc. But actually, it did give resolution, and it did mean that people like, say, your mum as example, wasn't on their own. They had people that were there to support, similar to what you're doing now. And we've lost a lot of that because a lot of families move away, you know, live in other countries. It can be quite tough, and you then end up relying on your friends really rather than your family. Exactly. Which you can't. There's an expectation there, isn't there, that you can't expect, if that makes sense. You know, and I know that for myself recently, what we've been through. So, you know, I mean, our friends have been brilliant, but you know, there's only so much they can give. They go home and they forget that what's happened. Totally. Yeah. You know, they don't have to think about it. It's you that's left at home having to think about it, and your family's left thinking about it. Yeah. And I think that's kind of a difficult situation that has occurred just through people's geographical kind of choices now. Whereas before, everybody lived in the same road as each other. You know, Your kids live next door but one, and your granny lived next door but three, and you know, but it's not like that anymore.
No. And I watched a program recently. It was called How to Live to 100, and you know, that was like one of the factors that they like kind of researched all these areas called blue zones that were living.
I watched that show. Yeah,
so good, wasn't it? And they were saying that like one of this place in Italy, you know, that they don't have any nursing homes. They don't exist. You know, and people are living longer because they have that sense of family. They get that care that they need, you know. And I think that, because I think they were saying that when people go into nursing homes, it must be so lonely, and it must be like awful, you know. I know it's necessary for some people.
Yeah. But I think there's a difference between a nursing home and a care home. And there's that bit about some people need to be nursed because they've got a physical problem.
True.
And they need to have somebody to watch them 24 hours a day. A care home is not that. It's somewhere where they're caring. And I suppose what's the psychological dynamic that kicks in when you're put in a care home by your family? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's like, where does the care start and finish? Is that caring when you put somebody in a care home? And it's a trust thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a great believer in keep people in their homes as long as possible.
Exactly. I mean, there'll come a time, maybe, perhaps, I don't know, where it's not possible. But until that time comes, then, yeah, I just sometimes think, is anybody going to do this for me when I'm
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Will they? That's the thing, though, isn't it? Will
you
they?
can come and help me, Ange.
Oh, thanks. I'm a lot older than you. You'll be coming to care for me before I come to care for you.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is when do you know is the right time to ask for help? And I'm not just talking about asking for help for when you're elderly or whatever, but there is a point in your life when you go, do you know what? I do need an intervention in my life of some kind.
Yeah. It's a great question, you know, and it's a very, I think that's something that you have to just decide for yourself. I mean, I think I was, you know, I was actually the one that asked for help for my mum initially. And like, I think maybe I was a bit too much because I know how to ask for help and I know that there's help out there. I think I was maybe a wee bit too much, right? There's this, you know, and then I saw that some of it was helpful, some of it wasn't. And actually what was really helping her the most was just having her family and you know, being in the comfort of her own home, and just even simple things like going out for walks and trying to keep her as independent as possible. But I suppose then there's the other side where people just don't know how to ask for help and maybe take on too much and then burn themselves completely out. And that was my fear. You know, my fear was that maybe me and my brother would get sick, and yeah.
You've had a similar experience with your mum as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and my grandmother is one I was really thinking of. And yeah, it's very, very difficult because you can end up becoming a bit overwhelmed and a bit overloaded with it, and your own life kind of it becomes more difficult to do things. And it's also very hard sometimes, or certainly the experience I've had, they don't think they need help. They don't want help, but then they'll ring you and go, I've fallen over, or I need this. And you go, well, that is help. Okay, it's different, and I'm happy to help, but I can't be there 24 hours a day.
Or you don't want to be there 24 hours.
Yeah, or you don't want to be there 24 hours a day. And it's I think that's why I think what you were saying about your rota is a really good way of creating those boundaries, and it works well. It's more difficult for people that perhaps don't have family close by, or perhaps don't have siblings. I've got a good friend of mine who's struggling at the moment with his mum. And you know, he's an only child, and he's finding it incredibly difficult. You know, he's being phoned 24 hours a day. Sometimes it'll be because she's lost the TV remote. Sometimes it'll be because she's fallen over. And of course, you don't know which of those two things it is that is going to be about when she phones at 2 a.m. and
exactly.
you can't ignore it, and it's impacting on his life so much. And he's at that point where he's trying to work out, well, is a care home or a nursing home the right thing?
Yeah.
But then there'll be a week will go by and he won't receive a call and everything's hunky-dory, and it can be really challenging, really challenging.
Oh, absolutely. I think I really identify with you there, Mike, and it's like what Angie was saying, there's a difference between asking for help and being able to receive help, like the right help. And sometimes, like what I noticed with my mum is that a lot of it was just a fear, not just, but it's fear, like terrified to be on her own in case something happens, so like there's always that, I need you here, but then when you're there, you're not doing anything. So it's like, apart from like giving her some reassurance of being there.
That's right.
And it's like, how do you call that boundary? Because you don't want them to be scared. But then when I tried to like sort of therapize my mom, try to get her help to work on that, she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't know how to do that. She doesn't like really want to talk about feelings, or yeah. So it's very tricky.
It is, and one size doesn't fit all. I always remember my nan before she passed away. I organised sort of the Meals on Wheels for her because I didn't think she was eating particularly well, and it's a great service, but unfortunately it's not one size fits all. So the issue that we had is she was going to dialysis 3 times a week, but often she'd get picked up early in the morning and she'd be back at 1-2 o'clock. Well, the Meals on Wheels service, they deliver between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. So 3 days a week, unless they can deliver the food in the house, they won't deliver it. But you had to pay for it even if you weren't having it, and it just seemed a little bit backwards. And I remember negotiating with them, saying, "Can you just leave it like in a bag outside, like one of these takeaway bags, so that it stays warm? But hopefully half an hour later she'll be home and she can have it." And they agreed, and that first meal was I think it was a quite a spicy curry, and my nan's of that generation of no spice. She would barely touch salt and pepper. It's as plain food as possible.
Oh,
she has that
my
meal.
mum's the same.
Yeah. And she had this meal and she was like, never again. So then
this is the other thing. Everything's too salty, or it's too dry, or it's too, like, there's nothing that's good enough.
That's it. And it's like, how many barriers do you have to kind of get through, or do they get thrown up towards you? You're trying to help, trying to find solutions. And
but it's not the problem. We try and find solutions for other people. I'm reading a book I'm listening to a book, and it just reminded me of all my training and stuff about being a therapist, and that bit about it's not your job to find the solutions, it's the individual's job, because otherwise it's not going to work. It's your solution then, if you see what I'm saying. I mean, I'm going to relate this to you. How many times did I ask you over the years to do a spreadsheet of the incomings and the outgoings of your business? And it took you about 3 years to bloody well do it. And it was like, for goodness sake. And you went, oh, it's a really good idea. And I went, yeah. He said, I wished I'd done it years ago.
Yeah, this is it. And it is funny, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, my other grandmother is not very well at the moment. And she's moaning about not being able to get a doctor's appointment and things like that. She goes in to see the doctors and she can't hear the doctor because her hearing's not very good, but she won't accept that her hearing's not very good. She thinks it's the doctor's fault because he's not talking loud enough, and things like that. And I said to her, I said, maybe you should go and see a private specialist. You can pretty much choose a time when you go. There's no waiting and all of this kind of thing. And she's in a fortunate position; she can afford to do that. So I printed off 4 or 5 specialists that she could see with their bios, and I gave it to her and said, there you go, have a look, see which one you like the look of. Here's some choice. Engage with your own health. And anyway, 24 hours later, I get a phone call saying, "Oh, I don't think I want to go and see any of those right now." Yeah. Okay, well, can we stop moaning about this then? Because every time I see you, all you do is moan about this same problem. You're not going to do anything about it or allow other people to help you. Yeah, we need to kind of stop moaning about it.
But not everybody's proactive, though, are they? Not everybody kind of takes that on board and thinks, oh, I need to make some changes. I mean, it's a bit like being in recovery. You know, it's not something that you, at the time, people are going, you need to ask for help. You need to go and get some help. You need to do this. You need to do that. And you hear it all, and you know it. But actually, are you ready to do it? You've got to be ready, don't you?
Of course you do. Yeah.
Like Granny's got to be ready, doesn't she, to do it? And I'm exactly the same in every which way.
Yeah. Maybe it's an age.
Yeah. I'm amazed that, like, you know, me and my partner were talking about this not that long ago, like all the things that we're doing now, like, you know, and kind of like the suggestions that we're practicing now are all things that my mum told me years ago. Like, you know, she was telling me all this stuff, you know, and I was just like, yeah. You know, but it only comes in when it's ready, doesn't it? And there's something more empowering about you kind of coming up, like what Angie's saying, coming up with your own solutions. Like, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, let's face it, when people point the finger at you and they tell you what to do, 9 times out of 10, our little child inside goes, go away, leave me alone. I'm quite capable of making my own decisions. I don't need you to interfere.
Exactly.
And it is truly that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we all revert back to child when we're in that situation, and nobody wants to hear, do it my way, or you know, you will, or any of that.
I'm just laughing because my dad used to tell me, like, if I want you to do something, I'll tell you to do the opposite. So like, you have more chance of me doing something if you tell me not to do it.
Really? I'm like that when I'm driving. I've got no sense of direction and I want to go right. And I know that I've got no sense of direction. So I go left now.
Yeah.
But it's taken me this length of time to work it out. And it's similar. Yeah. It's that similar weird thinking that we all have. So what are you actually doing now? Are you working purely as a private therapist now?
So I'm working in independent practice, which means so I work with like a company, but I'm independent within that. So I book my own diary. They can help with getting clients in the room. So I've been doing that for coming up 2 years. And I'm in a 3-year training. I'm training to be training to work with trauma specifically. So I'm doing a course, I don't know if you've heard of it, somatic experiencing. It's like mind blowing.
What does that mean for the uneducated?
Yes, so somatic is body and experience is experience. So basically there's theories there around, you know, trauma does affect the brain, but it also probably more so affects the nervous system the most. And so it's about working with trauma through the body, and how to kind of, you know, underneath that there's like stuck fight or flight or freeze responses, and how when we can activate them, we become more whole. And it's completely blowing my mind. I've actually just finished my 6th. So we do 2 6-day courses in a year. I've just finished my 2nd year, so next year I'll be in the advanced. Wow. And it's just something like when I left treatment, it was just something that I was really passionate about learning about trauma, you know, through personal reasons as well, and it's just been so fascinating.
I think one of the things about it's identifying that intuitive responses that we have, not only through our thinking process but also through our physical process, but very often people will ignore that, and how we've got so far away from that, and now we're trying to draw people back into that place where you do have an understanding of that your body will tell you what's going on for you psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. But if you choose to ignore it, then the chances are there's a consequence to that. And then that tends to impede on your mental health and your physical health. It's not just one, it's generally both of them.
They're all linked. Yeah, absolutely.
So the links, that's right. And I think reflexology has a good point in that when you do reflexology, that you can actually it gives you a sense of how your body does respond to even the slightest touch. Can, on a certain part of your foot, you can have a feeling in your pancreas or your liver or your heart or whatever, and people go, oh my gosh, I can feel that. What, what's that about? And in a sense, that's what you're studying, isn't it? It's that the diverse kind of responses that we have, and they come through in such a strong way. But very often as human beings, we've moved away from listening to those intuitive responses.
It's exactly that. It's like when you look at animals in the wild, they don't get PTSD, they don't get traumatized. They face trauma, but they don't get traumatized because they have a inbuilt mechanism that allows them just to shake it off. They use their survival responses, they shake off the energy, then they go back to
life,
doing their little thing,
But
because we've got this part of the brain that gets in the way, we go, oh, I can't, better not do that. Walking down the street, if we bump into a lamppost, the first thing we're going to do is go, who saw it? Who saw that? We're not going to go, ow, or well, maybe we might, but but so it's like we've got these. It's bizarre. It's the most bizarre thing how when you get in touch with it, and you actually can release all this stuck energy that gets trapped in the body and causes illness. Really, I've had a lot of somatic issues with physical issues because I think of all the stress and trauma in my life. Things like insomnia, IBS, skin problems, and I now know what it's all about, and I'm learning to kind of heal that through this work.
But it is quite interesting, isn't it? Because you say that, and it's like you look at the average teenager who has incredibly poor skin. They suffer from acne, but it's not all of them. And that's the bit. The one that can shake the stuff off tend to be the ones that do not have acute acne, or they might have the occasional spot, but they don't have the acuteness that some young people do. And you can see, and very often people don't identify that could be linked to a psychological challenge or a trauma of some kind. Something's happened, and there's not, very rarely is that connection made. Very rare. I know for myself, my own health, if I'm stressed, or if somebody puts me under stress, if you see what I'm saying, it's difficult to detach from stress when somebody else is kind of forcing that onto you. I think when you're in a work environment or you're in a challenging situation, and I'm just learning now to go, bye, I'm off. Do you know what I'm saying? And I, in the past, I would have just been polite and stuck at it, but now I don't. I just walk away. Absolutely, get up and go.
And that's a survival response that you have. You've got the ability to have a boundary and to say, no, that I don't want that, so that you don't then leave carrying that. But when you are an appeaser, and you've been an appeaser all your life, you're just going to kind of push and stuff all that stuff down, and then wonder why you're, ill a few years later. Or
What book did I buy you, Mike?
I don't think I can say that on it.
Oh no, you can't say it on it. It's rude.
It's got a swear word in it.
It's a very bad swear word. But it was about learning to say no. And that's the thing, is very often people don't. I mean, we had a situation yesterday, didn't we, where we were in I was in an uncomfortable situation. And I'd excused myself. And then I thought, why am I sat here listening to this? I don't need to listen to that. And I certainly don't need this person to be the way they are towards me. And you were there, weren't you, Mike? And it was like, I said, I've got to go now. And I just got up and left. And I was so glad I did. I was polite and I said goodbye and whatever, but I was so glad I did. But whereas I think in the past, I might have been a bit more tolerant, but actually I'm not prepared to do that anymore.
And that's something I've always admired in yourself and other people that do that. And maybe years ago I would have looked at that and thought, that's just rude. But now I'm like, wow, I need more of that. I need to listen to my body more. And you don't have to be disrespectful, but it is about listening to what your body's telling you and learning sensations and stuff that are, you know, what your body's telling you.
I think it's also about, you have to value your own time. And that's something that I've learned a lot in the last probably 3 or 4 years, that, you know, you have to value your own time. If you're sat in a meeting or having a conversation that is completely pointless or doesn't match your values, or I don't know, let's say you could be doing something far more important, you know, you have to just learn to, you know, be able to walk away from that. And it is really hard, and it does sometimes come across as a bit rude, and I think that's more just practice than anything. But yeah, the number of I actually really like the fact that since COVID, I do very few face-to-face meetings, which is fantastic. But there's been so many occasions, and that's kind of helped, I think, because it allows you to kind of shut down a meeting much quicker and easier when things aren't perhaps, you know, they've got to the point where you've discussed what you needed to. We don't need to keep that conversation going. We can finish and go back to our day now. Whereas when it's in person, it's much harder to do that. And I love the fact that COVID has kind of almost helped me create that strategy, which is really useful.
Except when you come to my house.
Yeah, maybe. One of the things I wanted to ask you is obviously you're a trained counsellor. Have you got a preference on how you see clients? Because as a charity, you know, we offer, it's very person centered. If someone wants to have a conversation on the telephone or by Zoom or in person, we allow that. And I just wondered what your view as a counsellor was, and how, whether that, you know, how you feel.
Yeah, how I feel. I like both, to be honest with you. I think there's like, yeah, I mean, I like seeing face-to-face clients. I like, you know, I think there's, yeah, I just really like to see people face-to-face. And I know some other people really appreciate that, but at the same time, I've had really very similar experiences being on Zoom. I quite like Zoom. I'm like quite happy to see people face to face. I also like the working from home side of things. You know, it really helps me to like, you know, do my washing or whatever, you know, in between, and like, but yeah, I prefer. I don't know if I have a preference, to be honest with you.
I mean, that's probably a good answer, because it means that you're hopefully going with whatever your clients prefer, but it gives them that flexibility.
Oh, we're so fortunate to have this space now. Like, it's just amazing. Like,
I remember before COVID, though, I used to ask people to do meetings online, do Zoom, and they refuse.
I have the same.
Trekking up to London to go for like 3 hours up there, because you can bet your bottom dollar the trains are cancelled, or there's no whatever's going on, and then for an hour to come all the way back, and what a waste.
I used to go to London probably at least once a month, and now I reckon I've been to London probably no more than twice this year. I know we're in December now. This podcast might come out in January, but yeah, 2023. I think I've probably been to London. I don't think it's more than twice. Really? For work. I mean, and that's so much better. And I've got clients all over the country that, you know, I used to travel to, and it's. I think clients get better service because we can have a Zoom. And there's days where I can talk to clients from, as I'm sure you do with your clients, you know, I can talk to clients from north, south, east, west, you know, miles and miles apart, and I can do all of those meetings in one day. Whereas before, I was, you know, it was a whole day out, plus sort of half a day before and half a day after, kind of preparing and then following up. Whereas now, it's so much easier. I love it.
I do think, though, as a counsellor, having face to face, you pick up an essence of perhaps a bit deep. You've got to know that person, I think, before you can kind of have a deep relationship. I know that sounds, I'm contradicting myself.
No, really. I know what you mean, because I've done sales pitches on Zoom, and I find it incredibly hard to read the reactions of the people that I'm in the room with.
Feel them.
Yeah. Whereas when you're in a physical room with them in the room, you get a much better sense of a vibe and where things are going. And I'm guessing it's the same with counselling.
Well, I had, sorry, Ange, I had my supervision,
right.
the same supervisor for years and years and years. And she'd say to me, you can do this by telephone. You don't have to drive an hour to see me for a couple of hours and then drive back home. It was like, it would literally take me virtually all day to do my supervision, which was not a waste of time, but it was a lot of time to commit just to that. And COVID meant that we couldn't. So I was still in practice. I was still working. So I still had to have my supervision. And I started speaking to her on the phone and I've never gone back. And I love it. It's a couple of hours on the phone and no hassle. It's no driving, no costs, no cost to her either. No go around the cold.
Yeah. And I have all my supervision online as well. And I think one of the things that I notice is that, like, so if I have a client who's a bit more sort of dysregulated, easily, overwhelmed, I find it easier to kind of reach them when I'm in person than it, but I guess there's certain methods or things that we can do to kind of try and sort of recreate the therapeutic space. Like maybe I'll lean more forward, or I'll have to speak up a bit more and use like direct grounding skills, in the moment. So it can feel a little bit more work at times that way. But, there's times where it's like, so say somebody have a session and somebody becomes ill, we can even just link up on Zoom instead of, them cancelling the session. So I find it very helpful.
That's good. Obviously, you talked about you're currently doing the course, and I can't remember what the word was that you used. That's the one. That's it. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to say that word. But obviously, as a counsellor, you probably come across people with all kinds of things that they need your support with. But have you got kind of a specialism?
Well, my specialism used to be addiction. I worked with addiction for 5, well, maybe longer actually, when I think about the work that I'd done before moving home. And now hopefully my specialism is going to be around trauma, but that's going to take a bit of time. So that's my special interest. I love working with grief. I love working with couples. I do a lot of couples therapy. I mean, I never knew that, like, that was something that I was so passionate about. I remember you and I did some family work, Angie, and that was like quite fascinating to me. So I've kind of got an interest in that, and I get a lot of couples. But other than that, it's pretty much general.
Yeah.
What presents you work with?
Yeah.
And I think that's the brilliant thing about people who are flexible about what they do. And I think it educates you more as well as a therapist. I think if you're completely only one tracked and you only want to do this or you only want to do that, I don't think it necessarily makes you a specialist. I think what it does is you become, and I don't want to use the terminology narrow-minded, because it's not, I don't mean that, but your field becomes so narrow that you end up de-skilling yourself rather than embracing.
For sure.
Yeah. And I just think that's an important thing for people to
You're
recognize.
so right. Like I thought that I could only really work with addiction for a long time because it was something that I knew inside out, so getting this new job, that I had a lot of fear going into it, because I'd never really worked with specific, issues like, I don't know, ADHD, autism, OCD, gender issues. There was so much that I hadn't kind of been exposed to. And I mean, I had in some ways, but and it's really widened my knowledge and my perspective. And, I'm very passionate about keeping my learning up to date as well. So if I don't know something, I will go and learn about it so that I can offer, and then there's times where there's things that I don't, okay, I know I'm not the person for this. So then you have to obviously think about referral. But to be honest, that doesn't happen that often, because at the end of the day, we're all the same, really. There's feelings and stuff that we can always identify with, I feel.
And that then comes back to the thing about Carl Rogers says about, it's about the relationship. It doesn't matter what. I mean, I don't know anything about building, but I don't know anything about, lots of things, but I can sit with somebody who's a builder. Yeah. And I can sit with somebody who's a carpenter. I can sit with somebody who, whatever. I don't need to know that part. All I need to do is create an environment where somebody can hopefully change if that's what they want to do, or realize that they don't need to change and they're perfectly okay the way they are, if you see what I'm saying. But it's creating that environment. And I think very often that's what scares people off from counselling, is you can get a lot of counsellors that either say nothing and don't have any relationship with their counsellor, or what they do is they're over involved, and so as a result there's too much direction and not enough kind of relationship. So as a result, people don't change, or they get resentful about it, which is sad, really, and it puts people off counselling and support and stuff. So let's change the subject slightly, because I'm quite good at that. Have you got snow in Scotland?
Not yet. We've had ice and frost, but not quite snow yet. So I'm hoping that we do.
Yeah. We've had ice and frost this morning, haven't we?
It's been really cold this morning.
I skidded in my car this morning. It scared me a little bit. Yeah, I went across a roundabout and I had to pull it back. I thought, oh no, dear, this is it. Accident happening. So this is So one of the things that fascinates me slightly is about the fact that people in Scotland are very loyal to the Scottish kind of nationality. Is that the right word? I don't know. And I just wondered why you think that is. Why are people more patriotic in Scotland than they say are in England? Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it just seems that way.
That's a difficult question. The first thing that comes to my mind is that we're a different breed.
Well, that's just contradicted what you just said.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think we just love our country. We're very proud of, like, well, I know I am. Like, we're just so proud of everything that that we have here. Like, I think there's like sort of that Celtic sort of nature about us, where we're quite like sort of patriotic warriors. This comes to mind. I don't know if that's like I don't know how to like answer that question really. Like, what is it apart from pride? Like healthy pride.
Is that part of sort of education in Scotland, do you think? That's kind of helped?
I think it's like, maybe not, it's not something we get taught about at school or anything, but I think it's definitely something that's passed down,
Yeah.
We have our own sort of traditions, and they're great, they're great traditions, like, and whenever I hear bagpipes, I cry, because it's like, it's in my heart, and it's something that I think definitely that my father passed down to me. He was mad about like Scotland and stuff, and like and my partner's the same, and his dad was the same. It's like whenever we hear certain songs, we'll literally cry, and it's just like a real sort of pride of who we are and what we've overcome. And yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if there's a slight shift in in England about the fact that we aren't necessarily have that pride. As I was talking to somebody, and they were saying that they're from Romania, and they were saying, and I said, why have you come to England? And they said, oh, we thought it was going to be better than what it is. And I thought, wow, and I think it's that. And there's an expectation, isn't there, that you're going to move to a country and it's all going to be like paved with gold, and everything's going to be wonderful. And the truth is, it isn't. And I know Scotland have a lot of problems. They have major problems, particularly with drugs and alcohol. But it's like, the fact is, you're still proud of your country, And I wonder if, as British people, are we proud of our country? I mean, I love where I live. I would never live anywhere else. This is my home.
Yeah.
And I suppose I am proud. I don't always like what's happening. And I'm assuming that that's the same for you guys in Scotland, really.
It is. I mean, obviously it's interesting because I watched this video. Yes, you know, you get funny memes and funny videos, and there's one that I'm on. It's called Scottish banter. Don't know if you know what banter means. Do you?
Yeah. We're not that bad. Yeah, go on.
I think that was directed to you, not me.
Yeah. Oh, you're frozen.
Oh no.
No, what's happened? Oh,
are you
back.
there?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, we lost you.
We lost you.
Go on then. What was the banter?
Yeah, so you understand what banter means. Yeah. I wasn't sure if that's just so like, and
no,
there
it's
was
not a Scottish word.
no, okay. Leather is. I learned that the other day. Anyway, so like
Leather?
it had like leather.
As in fake leather?
No, blether. We're having it. Yes, well done.
Because I was brought up in County Durham for quite a bit of my childhood, so it's so very close to Scotland that the Geordie and the Scottish are very close in that kind of language, if you see what I'm saying. So I'm pretty astute with that one. Yeah, go on then.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say, there was a compilation of videos that was kind of like making humor out of, you know, sort of the daftness of like Scottish people sometimes, and like the I don't know what the word is, but like so like it's like dark humor. Like there's bits of it that are like there's in poverty, and there's like, but there's always like humor, and there's always like, so I'm trying to think how to describe this. Basically, what I'm trying to say is like even that culture of Scotland where there's like, you know, outrageous behavior, like I'm so proud of that, because it's like that's part of our culture. You know, we're mental. We're absolutely like mental sometimes, you know, and there's things about that that's really funny and really endearing, and like of course there's a dark side as well, which is like none of us want to experience, and that's, you know, that is also part of but that's part of every culture, isn't it? Really, addiction's everywhere, and there is a bigger problem in Scotland as far as I'm aware. But there's I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think the humor really does kind of measure whether somebody understands your culture or not, doesn't it?
Lost her again.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, it keeps cutting off.
I don't know why.
I know.
It's gone to sleep. But I think humor can always tell, can't they? Because people, you know, that we have a very strong different kinds of humor wherever we are, aren't we? We can always take the mickey out of it. I mean, we sit around the table, well, you eat here quite a bit, so you sit around the table in this house and the family's around, well, watch it.
Exactly.
Because it's going to happen. You get the banter is going to go around the table, and it's going to be full on all day or all night or whatever the circumstances are. And we just take the mickey out of each other. And it was like you were saying this morning about Dave. Oh, Dave's very lively today, isn't it? And you could absolutely rip it out of him for being so blooming lively. But that's what you do, isn't it? And I think that's the thing about, do the French have a cult? Do they have a sense of humor? I don't know. I'm just pulling them out randomly because they're quite close to us.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine they do. Just it's very different. You know, our humor is very dry. It's very kind of. It's all of that, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. There was things.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say there was things like on the videos that other people would have saw and went, that's horrendous. But I was like laughing because it was like I've seen the funny side of it, and like I
went to a show once with a guy, some friends, and it was a guy called, I think he's called Timmy Turner or something like this. And I'm sure he was Irish. I don't know if he was Scottish. I'm pretty sure he was Irish. And some of the things that he talked about were shocking, and you shouldn't be laughing about it. But in fact, his humour was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
So sorry, I don't know what's happening.
I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on.
We lost you there. I don't think you caught any of that story.
Do you think we should call it a day if we're having such
should we
problems
end it there?
Are you happy for ending it there? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we'll
don't
have
want to
to
hear
do
your
it.
story, but you can tell me another time.
I'm sure you can watch it on the video. You can watch yourself on the video.
That's it, yeah. And we'll have you back on again,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's been really good fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, thanks for coming. Much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want to? I just thought, well, do we need to be letting people, if they want to advertise their business or they want
Absolutely, yeah, they should.
Would you like to let everybody know how they could get hold of you if they wanted to? Or do you not do that?
I don't do that because they come through the company.
Okay, that's
but maybe in a year's time when I'm, up flying high.
Solo.
I'll let you know.
All right,
Will do. Sounds
Lovely
good.
to talk to you and speak to you
And
soon.
you.
Take care. Have a lovely Christmas as well.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.